Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. I am Rajnikant and today's video we're gonna discuss how we can handle exceptions in Spring Boot. Okay, so how we're gonna handle those exceptions and we'll send error response to that client whoever is calling that API. Okay, so in details we're gonna see. Okay, so if you have not subscribed my channel yet, please do subscribe it immediately and hit the bell icon to get all the notifications from my side. Okay, I'll give my LinkedIn IDE and our Telegram channel link as well in the description section. You can collaborate there as well. Okay, so first of all we need a Spring Boot application to have our POC. Either you can generate that Spring Boot application from starter.spring.io. So this is that link. From here you can choose either whatever that language if you want. So for project, Maven project I'm choosing, and language is Java, and Spring Boot version, whatever the version you want you can choose here, and group ID, artifact ID. So real-time exception handling in Spring Boot we will develop. Okay, and package name, that's all, and packaging style jar, and what is the Java version, so I am choosing here 17, and post that you can add your dependencies. So for this exception handling thing, just we want web dependency itself, so Spring Web, and if you are doing some database operation then you can choose based on those dependencies as well. So for our POC I am choosing web here, and then you can generate. So once it's got generated, then you can open your any of the favorite IDE. Then we can import that project to your IDE. So already I have generated that project and I have coded everything, and I will gonna explain you here. Okay, so this is the application real-time exception handling, and this is the pom.xml where everything will be there, those dependencies like starter wave and test. Apart from that one nothing is there, right? So Java version 17 I am using, and this is the main class, okay, which is annotated with @Spring Boot application. So first I have created those packages like controller, custom exceptions, and global exceptions. Okay, while coming into exception handling, we can handle those exceptions in two ways. Okay, one is at controller level, another is at global level. Okay, so here exception handling means whatever those exceptions occurred in our application, how we want to send the data, send those exceptions to the client in the client facing, right? For example, I am calling that calling these REST endpoints from postman. Okay, so while calling from postman, something happened, some error or some exception happened in that program, and I want to send those error responses. So how I will handle and send those error responses? Okay, lot of time in interview will face this kind of questions, as well as while developing that application we need to handle this kind of scenarios. Okay, so let's see how we'll handle. First we need to develop a controller or REST controller or REST API. Okay, so already I have created a user controller, and let's see. Here I have a user controller and I have annotated with @REST controller. So it will return JSON as a response, and here I have a method as a add user, and I am taking user as a parameter, and @request body will bind that request body to this user object. Okay, and I have mapping that method with @post mapping and /user as a URL. So this is that user, whatever the payload will send from the postman or any of the client whoever is calling this API, so that payload will bind to this user object. Let's go to this user object and we'll gonna see. Okay, so this user object is present in entity package. Okay, this user is present inside entity package, so nothing much. just is a simple user class, and user has ID and first name, last name, and email. And for all these attributes I do have getters and setters as well. Okay, now let's move forward again to our user controller. So in user controller, what I am doing, so I am validating that data, whatever the user in user object those data are present. So here I am validating something. So first I am checking if it's mail, that email ID is proper or not. Okay, so ideally in real time we should validate that email with regex pattern, but for simplicity, to show you some POC, just I am checking if that email ID is contains @ symbol. If that email ID is not contains @ symbol, means it's a not a valid email. Okay, if it is not a valid email, what I am doing, just I am throwing a custom exception. Okay, so here that email ID is not a valid email ID. Okay, so in that case what I am doing, here I am throwing a custom exception, email validation exception. Now let's see this email validation exception and what I have done. So this is that custom exception. So we know that how we can create a custom exception. Simply create that exception class, then extend it from runtime exception, then have a public constructor and take that error message and send that error message to super constructor. Okay, so this is the custom exception I do have. So hope you got this email validation exception. Okay, now let's move to user controller. So here I am throwing that email validation exception. So this is scenario 1. If you are throwing any custom exception, this is one scenario. So two scenarios are there. Okay, one is you are sending some custom exception, it's a user exception. Okay, another is if you are getting some system exception, like you are calling to a remote API and that API is sending some exception or timeout error. So how you want to communicate to the client, how you want to send the response to postman. Suppose I am calling the URL from the postman, so how I want to send that response in that case. Okay, so one is user thing, so user want to validate and want to send some custom exception. Another is if you are calling some API or some DB and the DB is down or something failed, so that time also those kind of exception also we can send some error messages to the client. These are two categories. So here the category number 1, I am throwing some custom exception like email validation exception. Okay, so here it's throwing that exception. Now how we want to handle this one and how we want to send the error messages. Okay, so while throwing that exception, you should not put a try case and eat that exception or swallow that exception. You should not do that one. Okay, if you put a try case like here, try and catch. Okay, if you put a try case like this, here I am putting some exception E. Okay, so what it is saying, okay, empty case block, so E dot print struct trace. Okay, so if you'll do this kind of thing, right, so putting try and catch and eating that exception, so here what we are doing, just we are eating that exception or we are swallowing that exception. Again we are not throwing this exception. So in that case we cannot send that error message to the client. Okay, so we should not put this try case and eat those exception. If you put the try case, then again we need to throw from this catch block. Okay, so we should not put this try case and eat that exception. Okay, so once we have something went wrong. Let me go back. Okay, I'm done. So I am throwing some exception, email validation exception. Okay, so how we want to handle and send that error responses, either at controller level or at global exception handler, right? So first let's see how we can handle these things in controller level and send the error response. Okay, so first of all we need to create a method. Okay, and we need to annotate with @exception handler like this. So here email validation one method is there, and I have annotated with @exception handler, and value is equal to whatever the exception you want to handle. Okay, if this exception is occurring in your program, if this email validation exception is occurring in your program, then that time this method will execute. Okay, so here public response entity, and I want to send some error response, right, to that user, whoever is calling this API. Okay, so then email validation, and inside this method parameter we can have the same exception class as a parameter. Okay, now once we got this email validation exception, it's thrown that email validation exception, then it will come to this method email validation exception, and we'll get this exception object over here. Then from this exception object you can create your error message. Okay, so here after taking this exception object I am creating a error message. So this is a error class. If you'll see, I have created inside error package. So this is a simple error class where I have added two attributes like status code and error message. If you want to send some custom status code, right, so in a lot of applications and project in real time we are sending some custom code, and we are informing those clients that these are the custom codes, and based on that they will handle from their side. Okay, if you want to send some custom error code, then you can put those attributes and error messages. So here I do have two attributes. Okay, and one more thing, you need to have setters and getters, public setters and getters, and I have created a constructor for that one. It's the error class. Okay, now let's move to user controller. The same thing, here I have created that error object, error equal to new error, and here status code I am putting some 1000. This is a custom error code, and error messages I am getting from this exception object exception.getMessage. Okay, hope you got it. Now I do have error object. From here I am sending that error object with a wrapper, the response entity wrapper, and here I am putting that error object and the status code. Okay, so this HTTP status and bed request. So based on your convenient what exactly the status code you want to send, just you can send from here. Okay, so this is known as what? At controller level, how we can handle exceptions. Okay, once this exception occur like email validation exception, the control will come to here in this method. From this method we'll get exception, and from this exception object we'll take that exception message and we'll create a error object, and we'll send this error object from in response entity. Okay, so this error object will go as a JSON response. Okay, so now let's run this application and we're gonna see. Okay, so let's run. Then post that we'll see how we can create a global exception handler. The same thing, a little bit code change. So just we need to understand the concept, then we can do easily everything. Okay, so 9090 port, my application got started. So already I have opened my Postman. So already I have tried this one. Okay, so here what is that? Email will send wrong, right? So I am not sending this @ symbol. Now let's see. Okay, so if you will see, we are getting the JSON response, right? What is status code as 1000 and error message as a not a valid email. Okay, not a valid email. Now let's see if I will put a try case block and I will eat that exception. What is that user controller? Wherever exception occurred, you should not eat those exceptions. If you are eating those exceptions, then will not get appropriate error messages. We are not able to send that appropriate error message to the client, whoever is calling. Okay, so if you want, I will do that one. Try and gets exception e, and here e dot print stack trace. Though we'll get those exceptions in console, but at the end will not get in Postman, right? So in Postman this kind of response will not get. Now let me rerun that application. Stop and rerun. Okay, then again we'll hit and try from the Postman. We are good. 9090 it's running. Let's go to Postman and let me hit again. Just see, we are getting success message. I mean it's saving. We are not getting the error response, though it's validating, but I am not getting the error message, right? But in that console I am getting email validation exception, right? Hope you got it right. So while if you want to send the error response to client, so you should not eat those exceptions. You can put e.print stack trace, and from here again you can throw those exceptions. Okay, so like this, if any system exceptions like you are calling to third-party API or the DB exceptions are also the same way, you can throw those exceptions, and you can handle these things in either controller level or at global exception handler level, right? So now let's see how we can create a global exception handler. Okay, so already I have created a package for that one as well. Here global exception and global exception handler. So you need to annotate with @controller advice at top of that class. Then the same thing, whatever the things we have declared over here, the same thing, create a method and put the parameter as what are the exception you want to handle. The same exception name you can put over here, and @exception handler with value is equal to that particular exception dot class. And the same way, the same thing we need to declare in global exception handler. Okay, so here I have created another exception class like custom exception first name validation exception. So this is kind of name validation custom exception, and we are throwing some validation exception like this. So we'll get this exception object, and we are creating a error object, putting 1000 as the status code, and exception.get message will get that exception messages, and we are creating a response entity object by passing this error and status code. Okay, so hope you got that how to create a global exception as well, right? Global exception handler as well. Now let's go to our controller class and we will see how we are throwing this first name validation exception. Then we're gonna test. So the same way for POC purpose, what I have done, I have put if condition if user.get name. If the name contains a special character like a exclamatory symbol, then this is not a valid name, right? So that time what I am doing, I am throwing some validation exception like first name validation exception, and that message not a valid name, whatever the name we have received from that postman. Okay, so this is the validation exception we are throwing. Now let's rerun this application. Okay, not required because already this code is present and we have run that application. Now let's see. I will send some invalid name. Then we'll gonna see how it is throwing exception. Okay, or we are getting error response. So I am putting a exclamatory symbol in my name and I am sending. Okay, so if you will see here, status code as 1000 and error message, not a valid name. Okay, so hope you got it. So how we can handle exceptions in Spring Boot and how we can send error responses to a particular exceptions to that client. Okay, so hope you got a crystal clear picture. So please have a valuable comments in the comment section, which will help me to upload more videos like this. And if you have any topics, let me know in the comment section. I will try to upload those videos as well, right? So thank you for watching, guys. Have a nice day.